Ladies and gentlemen, I think tanks should do damage. Apparently, this is a controversial opinion. There's this idea that seemingly existed in League for as long as I can remember. Tanks shouldn't do damage. They should just be big, they should just be durable, they should walk into a team fight, eat 7 billion things, and come out unscathed. Maybe occasionally hit a CC ability that will explode an enemy champ. Then their team will stand up and everybody claps. And honestly, I understand the fantasy. I've always liked the unkillable wall fantasy. If you've played a good tank engine game or an insane tank arena run, oh you know. Oh lord you know. I would love to walk into a team fight and feel like Canon Kratos fighting Baldur, while 5 people desperately try to figure out how the hell they're supposed to deal with me. But therein lies the problem. That is miserable to play against. And I think this is where a lot of people misunderstand why tanks are allowed to do damage in the first place. The damage isn't there so any tank can just randomly one-shot an ADC. The damage is there because a tank needs some way to make you respect them. And that distinction is incredibly important. Stick around and you'll see the truth straight from the Messiah himself. Most tanks function under a relatively simple system. All their core abilities are generally incredibly easy to understand and avoid. Cho'Gath Q, Scion Q, Orin Q, Amumu Bind. I don't have to explain them, you get what I mean. But there's a trade-off for that. If you were to get hit, they have all the potential to outright kill you or at least do a lot of damage. For some reason, the immediate reaction to a tank hitting something and getting rewarded is, why does a tank do so much damage? Because you got hit. That is how it's supposed to work. How else are tanks supposed to punish you for fucking up? We can't live in a world where a tank hits you and does 0 damage, because then what you have is a much worse world outcome. Let's imagine the dream scenario, the world where tanks do 0 damage. You walk up to Scion, he full charge Qs you, slows you, he walks around a bit, it looks scary, but he doesn't ever have the potential to kill you. Okay, cool. For the next 5 minutes, you're still battling this guy. Scion is on his 67th rotation of abilities, and you've lost about 100 HP. But here's the thing, Scion's health bar has barely moved. Here comes another full charge Q, here's another Roar of the Slayer, and eventually you'll realize, well, there's no point to even damaging him because I can't kill him. I probably should ignore him, plus he can't kill me either. So then, what is his viability as a character? I know what you're gonna say. Well, he can set up his team. Exactly. That's the problem. He is constantly able to look to disrupt your positioning, mess up your ability to play, and is non-stop demanding respect because he is always able to keep doing that. So what you have now is an unkillable walking CC bot that can get you killed at every 5-second intervals because he can just throw another Q at no repercussion to himself. But this doubles actually the problem. This is miserable to play against and as, because now the tank's entire value and existence is tied to creating opportunities for someone else to capitalize on, which is why pro play is taken into consideration when balancing tanks, but that's a different topic.
There's been a couple metas and a couple reworks we did to tanks that we caused them to do way less damage, but that was like, we quickly moved away from it each time that happened, because tanks tend to be unbalanceable for pro play when they're all about CC and not having some degree of damage.
Anyways, to rely on teammates purely is sometimes okay, in moderation. That is literally part of what a tank is supposed to do. But tanks still need some form of personal agency. You've heard the lines, they still need to be able to clear waves, play laning phase, and get rewarded with leads if they do play well. Because if they don't, in this hypothetical, you'd otherwise be essentially asking everyone in League to deal with and perfectly play around an entire singular role. A role whose sole job is to fist you over an extended, long period of time and you can't interact with it, much like your solo queue teammates. Making a tank revolve their purpose around CC only is incredibly one-dimensional, and I don't think that's particularly healthy at all. I'll play a bit of devil's advocate, because I know what people are going to rebuttal with. Well, I just don't want tanks doing insane damage. That's the kind of damage I'm talking about. I get that, but I'm generally talking about the core of tank identity. Plus, the only reason why the checks and balances of things like tanks being able to blow up your house is usually external. Things like metas. Some items end up incredibly busted because it's just that flavor of the month. Don't be surprised when Riot promotes something they shouldn't have and bring things out of line. You know how they work. The same can be said when tanks are considered bad because some other class is doing their job but better. But we'll talk about that later in depth down the line. Back on topic. As a tank player, I don't want to do 0 damage. I want to be able to create space. I want the enemy to look at me and think, oh shit, we can't walk through this guy. But part of why they should think that is the important part. Why can't they walk through me? Because I punish them if they do. That's the main takeaway I want you to understand from this video. Your damage doesn't necessarily have to be terrifying in of itself. A tank will never have the same damage output as a real damage class. People are often blowing this out of proportions. How often do you see a tank getting a pentakill? Without a doubt, I don't need to search it up to know that they have the lowest percentiles. Shit example, but you get what I mean. A tank just has to be making you ask the consequence of interacting with me terrifying. And that's a completely undersold thing.
So it's actually something like an intended part of tank's design that like one of the ways they can threaten you is with kill threat, assuming like certain like time windows or how low you are, things like that. Now,
if you see Scion, you know what he can do. You have time to react. You can interrupt him. You can dodge it. You can walk away. But if you just stand there and let this giant fucking zombie charge his axe and bash your skull in, that's good design because the damage is attached to a decision. You didn't respect him. I could probably make a montage on how many Fog of War, Bow, Scion, Q, Fortnite, Among Us jump scares he's done, but you get the point.
Nice. Oh.
This is also why I hate the concept that people always compare tanks in League to things like an MMO or some other game. That tanks can never be in a good spot because they need to draw aggro to be viable. That idea is so disingenuous because that's not how it works. Those games' identity and fundamentals are different. League does not have a traditional threat system. Tanks aren't supposed to be literal aggro magnets like we're playing an MMO. Every game has a different identity for how things should work. Those types of tanks and their identity is that they're supposed to take hits and walk it off. By definition, you are just a health bar that occasionally puts a tiny number on the screen. Here in League, the identity is different. It's a lot like Overwatch if anything, focused on way more different things. What makes a League tank so interesting compared to literally any other tank design is that their CC isn't the only thing that defines them. Everything about them defines them. Your health bar is a resource. You use it in conjunction to create windows of opportunity and space for your team to play. That is how you make use of yourself as a tank. Sometimes your presence is enough alone to make an impact as a tank. Saying something like Malphite just isn't ever viable just because he doesn't have a button that says, "Hey fuckers, hit me," as if Malphite isn't the definition of aura. His presence in the vicinity is enough to literally let you know that you have to be aware and ready to react to him. I know 100% of players are not perfect players. Don't lie to me. I know you're quaking.
Trust me, when you fire this game up, your little fucking nuts are gonna start quaking, buddy. Your little nuts are gonna be quaking.
Sometimes that comes in the form of threatening to kill someone. My good son Cho'Gath? He's hungry. A gentleman's gotta eat. That's how it works, because sometimes the threat of death is a real threat. But even that for tanks, the utility of that is often very counterable, or it comes at a cost. Most tanks are immobile or need some format to get access. But this is why I think League tanks are way more interesting than some other game design philosophies for tanks. You're controlling what an enemy is allowed to do. You're creating a zone where certain actions become bad decisions. And damage is a part of what makes that zone meaningful. You have to respect tanks. Let's talk viability. Sometimes there is a problem when something else starts doing the tank's job, but better, so to say. This is something I can actually get behind, like if a bruiser can dive the backline, deal enormous damage, survive forever, and create as much space as the tank. Well, why the fuck would you be playing the tank then, right? That's why I talked about balancing earlier. If we're talking about something that's obviously out of line, that's usually on Riot's part. Obviously, if Goredrinker is going to make Wukong God Super Heimler Supreme Leader of Evil, yeah, tanks are going to be bad, leading some people to say, you don't even need tanks. Which is fair. Yeah, you don't. You also don't need technically assassins. You don't technically need marksmen. You don't technically need half the fucking champions in a game. The game is playable without a tank, but that doesn't mean tanks aren't valuable. You don't judge the value of a class by asking, can I technically play the game without it? You ask, when is this thing especially valuable? And tanks can be incredibly valuable. Sometimes your team already has enough damage. Sometimes you desperately need someone who has the balls to walk into the enemy team. Sometimes you need to be reliable crowd control. Sometimes you need somebody who can absorb pressure so your carriers can actually play the game. That's the reason you draft them. I hate when people say that tanks are completely unviable because something might be doing their job better. Consider that tanks are arguably the most cost-effective champions in the game. A tank is like Garen/Annie, some basic bitch champ that is always going to get value. You're always going to get a net level without a certain risk. Instead of Wukong sucking off 3 people and risking his life in the process, all it takes is one good Cho'Gath Q. No risk, 20 yards away, every 5 seconds. And this is where we talk about comps. Drafting is one of the most core things about League. A good example is how tanks are always going to be viable thanks to countering or certain types of comps. Damage archetype counters, your Gallios, your Malphites, your Ramesses. Dive comp champs, Leona, Alistar, Sejuani, Gregosi. Peel focus champs, Braum, Poppy, Shen. Suddenly, this unnecessary class is looking pretty fucking useful. And the cool thing is, they do exactly what's on the tin. They all fight for their friends. And finally, I want to talk about tanks not being able to carry. Just fundamentally false. Including things like how I think even Riot has argued somewhere that most players want to be the guy who is making the magic happen, not the other way around. League is known for players who want to be the carry. It's true. I'm sure a lot of League players share the sentiment. But the thing I disagree with is that a lot of people don't perceive different ways of carrying the same. I think a lot of people just imagine the carry to be the literal definition of 1v9, a player who is single-handedly killing the whole enemy team, like an ADC. It's why we invented the term. But anyone can carry in League, it just looks different. An assassin who can play to their early strengths and shut down other lanes is carrying. If a bruiser TPs into a teamfight or bot lane and starts winning that teamfight, he's carrying. A support who is able to help other laners, might be the most applicable here since roaming support meta, is carrying. Like all the things above, a tank who is able to force the enemy into bad decisions is carrying. None of those are something people associate with the terminology of carrying though, despite the fact they are quite literally carrying. Did I say it enough? Do we get the picture? So all in all, tanks should do damage. You should respect tanks. They will always have some form of viability, just like any other champion in the game. Your champion is not the issue. And tanks can carry. They should be able to. Everyone should have the opportunity to. Take it from the Ornn Messiah himself. Tanks need damage. But I digress. I know you aren't subscribed. Subscribe. I swear to God some noob is gonna say, sir, purple guy from FNAF literally destroys your whole argument. Zillion time bomb that guy and force him to look at the Juggernaut list for 15 years. Oh, it would be my pleasure!
Are you kidding me?
And as always, thank you guys. If you watch this far for some reason to the end, thank you greatly. Leave a comment and I will probably read it. 100%, about like 99%. Basically, like, it's impossible for me to miss it. Bro, you have no idea how hyped I was when the man himself actually responded. I'm gonna be devastated if something in this video is incorrect.